I always, I love the Steve Jobs thing of making a dent in the universe. So what we want to attract and who we want to invest in and where we want to help with the power of our fund investor base is into those ideas that are will probably be very hard to get to that stage. But then once you get there, that will have massive impact and dent in the universe.
This episode is brought to you by WHU, the Otto Beisheim School of Management. WHU is reshaping the way students learn about business, management, finance, and entrepreneurship through its innovative programs and partnerships in Germany and across the globe. To learn more about this globally ranked university, visit whu.edu today.
Hey folks, Garrett here. In this episode of the Most Awesome Founder podcast, we welcome Sebastian Pollok, WHU alum, co-founder of groundbreaking love toy company Amorelie, and currently founding partner of Berlin-based VC fund, the Visionaries Club. Today we're discussing Polly's founder journey, his unique trajectory from student to founder, his post-exit transition into VC, and so much more. Hope you enjoy it.
Coming to you from WHU on the banks of the Rhine River in beautiful Vallendar, Germany. This is the best and most awesome founder podcast. A show about entrepreneurs, innovators, advisors, and educators, and the stories that make them who they are today.
Sebastian Pollok, it's good to finally do this. I know we've been talking about getting together and getting you on the podcast for quite a while now. And thanks for having me. And such a cool office you guys have here in Berlin.
Cool, yeah, welcome. Very much looking forward to the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time coming, and I think it's a topic that I've been really keen to talk about. Because, at this point I've now, I think, met with 40 plus WHU alums that have had pretty extraordinary trajectories in their entrepreneurial journeys. And to me, yours is unique.
How is that?
Well, I think you've done some interesting things that I'm looking forward to hearing you share. I find... I come from a background of tech entrepreneurship, but I'm always amazed at people that build ventures I'm interested in people that build ventures that aren't in the traditional tech space. Like about a month ago or so, I had Marcus Stahl on, who created Tony's. To me, that is just a wealth of learning, right? Like a venture that I could never even process, like how you would do something like that. Yeah. To me, what you did, it kind of fits in that same category.
Yeah, of consumer electronics, right?
Exactly. I'm going to leave that to you to kind of use the right adjectives around that. But as we do with all of our podcasts, we start from a perspective of storytelling. So why don't you go ahead and kick things off and tell us a little bit about your founder journey, where you come from, and kind of how you ended up to where you are today.
Sure. And I guess we can, I won't try to stretch this as long as possible, but give you a quick summary, and then you can also double click on any parts that you're more interested in. So, since this is a WHU founder podcast, I'll start at WHU. So I was there 2006 to 2009. I think I was on this back then typical WHU trajectory, which back then, so this is not to be confused with WHU today, which amazingly has turned into this cool entrepreneurship university. But back then it was definitely more of a third of my class went into consulting, a third went into banking, a third went into good old corporate. And I think it was just Dominik Richter, who then went on to start HelloFresh, Ferry Heilemann, who went on to start Daily Deal and sold that to Groupon, to Google, and me, who I think were the only three out of the large bunch who then actually ended up starting companies. By now, I think there are a lot more also from our year back then. But yeah, so it was different. And I was also almost on this path to consulting in my case. I had interned at BCG and then had an offer on the table, and a friend of mine, also WHU graduate, who talked me into spending a summer in Berlin in 2009. So that was right after I had to finish my bachelor thesis at the same time, but I spent a summer here in Berlin at Rocket. And Rocket back then wasn't the Rocket that it was then a couple of years later, and that definitely not what it is today, but it was still the very early beginning. So it was Saarbrücker Straße 21, so that infamous first headquarter of Rocket, where the Rocket summer party was also happening that summer, where Ollie was mingling between the 60 or 70 of us. So it was a small operation. I think Zalando was in the process of being started, and it was or had been started, but had been around for a year or so. So it's very early days, and I walked through the door of Home 24 was the venture, and by now it's known as Home 24, but back then it was still Lampenexperte.de, Kirschkernkissen.de, and a bunch of other random front-end stores modeled after the CSN stores concept that you know from the US, which is now Wayfair. And that construct, FP Commerce was the official name, took that same route over the next years to then end up being Home 24, which we all know today. But I was one of the first 10 on the team for that summer, and I loved it. I think ever since walking through that door of Saarbrücker Straße 21, spending the first day, I knew, okay, this is so much of what I've always loved, as even actually going back to my childhood, technology and entrepreneurship to some extent. I never defined it as such when I was a kid, but I was always the one organizing stuff and rallying all the kids in the neighborhood around certain causes, like, I don't know, saving the white Siberian tiger, which was definitely one of the causes that was very true to and close to my heart. But so I think that was a very pivotal moment for me in 2009. And then I kept the offer with BCG standing, because they always invited me to like nice drinking events and stuff. So things that I didn't want to say no to, but I already knew I was going to say no to the offer. Not because I didn't like it, but because I just found this, it just clicked, and I had found this one thing that I really, that I've been in love with ever since. So for the past, by now, 13 plus years. And I half-heartedly finished my master's. I went on to, after the summer, I went to St. Gallen and to Kellogg and to do my master's. But even during that time, I think I spent 50% of my waking hours on TechCrunch and organizing the first startup weekend in Switzerland and startup tours left and right. And so I really, I found my true calling, and it came to no surprise that I then interned at, now they're called Headline, back then eVentures or eVenture Capital Partners even, first in Hamburg and then in San Francisco in 2010, so a year after this Home 24 internship. That was during my master's. Once again, another WHU friend of mine, Tim Marbach, who had started Kaufda and sold that to Axel Springer, where Headline was one of the investors. He actually referred me to them, and that's how I ended up as an intern, first in Hamburg, then San Francisco. They really loved it, I loved it, and so they wanted to have me back, and I started as a VC in San Francisco, and did that until 2012. But always had a feeling I wanted to start my own company, and that's why I moved back from Silicon Valley, from the dream job of lots of people to actually shitty apartment here in Berlin. If you're at Soho House in Berlin, go up to the rooftop, take a look straight left. There are some super shitty German Democratic Republic building, you know, buildings, yeah, you know those. And that's where I lived, in this little student dorm, paying, I don't know what, $150 a month, because I needed to keep my burn low, because I didn't want to ask my parents for money, and so I only had my savings. And yeah, that's where I worked on lots of stupid startup ideas, and eventually I gave myself 12 months. So it was definitely tough 12 months, living on a tight budget and always coming up with startup ideas and then dropping them after testing them out, and then coming up with new ones. So you had Steve Blank on, you know, this I was definitely looking for this my epiphany.
Were you doing this alone?
Alone, then random team constellations that then also broke up again, and I was always the one who remained with, I guess, the biggest or most enduring will to actually find something in the end. But then it was after trying to attack this from a very structured point of view, going through the yellow pages from A to Z, and, you know, starting with A and thinking about all the different industries, etc., and whatever. What's a good example with A, like Arztpraxis in German, so A like let's say. Help me out. What's a good job that starts with an A in English?
Arztpraxis, so like a medical.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so
you were basically
I was
combing every type of
exactly that's why I wanted to say. I was just trying to find a good job that starts with an A in English, and I can only come up with one in German right now. But it's aviation, starting with aviation and ending with zoos or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that didn't lead me anywhere, and then it was actually more by coincidence that I think I was approaching month 9 or 10 out of those 12. I told myself to not take a job, so until those 12 months are over. So I didn't earn any money. I was just working on ideas, and then in winter of 2012, I together with Lea, my then Amorelie co-founder, and we had met at BCG, doing both our internships there. We discovered this unmet pain point. Maybe pain point is the wrong description here, but I guess for some. But so 50 Shades of Grey had just come out, was released in the UK, and completely went through the roof. It was even more successful for part of times than the Bible and then Harry Potter. So that means a lot. So you suddenly get an idea for the dimensions, and we also I had an example from Fab.com, which was like a bon privé type of website selling design items, and whenever they put on love toys, like design love toys, they were also sold out within a super short time, and then we really started thinking about that, you know, most people at some point in their lives have a relationship. I guess all of us at some point, and to most of us, it's also, if you really think about it, it is the one of those things that are also true and core to your happiness. And then we started thinking, so why isn't there almost like a Zalando for people's love lives? Why isn't there this super cool, high-end, fashionable lifestyle site where you can, you know, buy stuff and try out stuff for your love life? And so I think we were the first ones to go beyond those initial chuckles and but we can't do that. We're whatever Mannheim and WHU grads, and so we really thought about this very differently and asked ourselves, so, you know, what would we want to see in this site? How would it need to be done? And what are all the question marks and all the this little embarrassed moments that you would probably have, and how can you best meet them as an Amorelie. And and then we also, obviously, since we're both Lea and myself come from a business background, we also asked ourselves, how do the economics actually look like in this business? And I think that's when it truly got interesting, because being the first to actually professionally and seriously think about this, we were met with a world that is very different, where people don't, so the traditional producers and the traditional merchants, that think train station district, think offline, think weird products, and that black plastic bag that you get when you that everybody knows what's in there. So we actually went the complete opposite direction. We went more Apple, more high end, and then you have crazy gross margins. I knew from my time at Home24 that storage and shipping, etc., let's say of a chair or a table or any sort of furniture, you may sell it for 200 euros, but it takes crazy amounts of storage in the warehouse. It's complicated shipping. People, when they return it, it's also complicated. Return rates are a big problem in e-commerce, generally speaking, right? With the Zalando back then with 50+% return rates. And then we suddenly stumbled upon this business vertical where you end up with and that was pretty much unnegotiated gross margin of 50% plus. We, at some point when we started introducing private label in our own products, then you suddenly were at 85%, 90% plus gross margin. You had super low return rates, obviously, because of the type of products, of 2-3%. So pretty much no competition, how we approach the product. Yeah, so we dared crossing the Rubicon and making the step, and actually on January 25th of 2013, launching Amorelie. And we thought we could now scale this very easily, as we had learned at Rocket, each one of us, and seen before, just doing performance marketing, Google ads, etc., only to realize, oh shit, actually, people don't know about this, and there are very few people who actually start Googling love toys, and so we realized, at least within the customer group that we were targeting, which was more female-driven, more couple-driven, and definitely more mainstream within the center of society, not somewhere at the extreme outskirts of the society. So we actually realized what we knew how to do is not going to get us anywhere, so performance marketing, but we need to learn how to do brand marketing. We actually need to establish Amorelie as a brand. We need to develop PR blueprints, which we did with our little pop-up stores and with seasonal products and the Christmas calendar and stuff like that. And we also need to look for not pull-based marketing channels, but more push-based. So AKA TV, for example, which was a big breakthrough for us. Much a year later, after we had struggled to get to, I think, almost was a little less than $1 million in the first 12 months, but we had to invest $1 million to get out $1 million, so that was minus 100% EBITDA. Not the greatest business on the planet if it had stayed that way, but going from there to then launching TV and then seeing that explode, because if you remember back then, so this was then January 2014. When you turn on ProSieben, for example, this German TV station, you could when you went into one of those 7-minute or 8-minute ad blocks, then it's just travel, fashion, but then suddenly love toys, and we were the first ones to ever bring this to television within the Heidi Klum, Germany's Next Top Model type of prime time, really 8:30 p.m. ProSieben ad block, and ad block is the wrong word, but ad session, and so it was insane. I just remember us sitting there when the first ad was aired, and on Google Analytics in the live view, and so it was on whatever our baseline was, and then suddenly saw this huge spike, and so we knew we were onto something then, and I think then the rest, as they say, is history. But so we went from struggling barely to this 1 million in the first year to then fast forward another 3 years actually to then ending the year 2017 with 60 million in net sales, 20% positive EBITDA, so doing 12 million in actual EBITDA. So super profitable business, fast growing, with an amazing team of more than 100 here based out of Berlin, but pretty much covering Europe. So it was a big struggle, and if from the outside it did look like this super nice exponential growth trajectory. If you zoom in at any of those points, then you will still see the ups and downs, but at least I would say the overall trend line, the flattened trend line, pointed in the right direction. And we had raised some funding along the way from great investors, also so the guys behind Cherry, for example, who are amazingly helpful. The SB 21, so the Saarbrücker 21, some ex-Rocket dudes who are also amazing. Then Power Ventures, a cool fund, and some more funding. And then ProSieben also seeing how successful those ads were. And comparing, they compared everything. That they're super KPI driven. Comparing that to all the other companies who are airing their ads, and then they saw, okay, that's a crazy response rate. We've never seen that. That's a crazy response to conversion rate. That's a great and crazy conversion to gross margin / cash flow rate. They also decided first to invest in the company, and then into 2018 to acquire Amorelie, pretty much to 100%.
Did the station, did ProSieben invest, or did Seven Ventures?
It was called Seven Commerce.
But it was basically their CVC arm.
Yeah, but it's tightly integrated it was tightly integrated at ProSieben back then. So we there was no Chinese wall or anything, but and it was part of the value proposition that obviously we would then have access to amazing TV deals, and pretty much to the power of media, one of Europe's largest media companies, and we also used that quite heavily. And we also had made the decision to allow them to invest, which is a bit atypical, because we saw that, and I think, sorry, one step back, I think every business has kind of an Achilles heel, and I think that's how you say it, right? So Amorelie's Achilles heel was customer acquisition because of that what I explained earlier. It was still a less pull but more push based and market education type of business, and so we knew that getting exclusive access to something like ProSieben, that was going to be such a crazy enabler for the business, and that's why we had decided to take them in as an investor, started working with them, and then in 2015 they also that's when they had also stepped up a bit more, and then in 2018 they decided to acquire the entire business. And there was obviously a crazy moment.
Did you see that coming? that a television, a media company would buy a sex toy company?
No, and I mean, I should show you slide deck number 1. So much of what we had to do and ended up doing wasn't in there at all. So as I said, we thought it was going to be performance marketing-based business, but I'm so happy that it wasn't, because pretty much all performance marketing-based businesses pretty much went down the drain as soon as Amazon got even more successful, and people rightly say, whatever has a barcode that you can scan, Amazon will probably do it and will probably dominate. However, if you think about what's Amazon good at and what do we, I guess it goes for not just you and me, but pretty much for everyone, what do we use Amazon for typically? It's not to discover products, but it's to search for products when you already have something in mind that you want to buy. Then you type it in, or you type in a product category. But it's typically, it's less of an inspirational discovery side. And Amorelie is 100%, I'll take you by your hand. You probably don't know anything about this, but hey, you can trust us. We've been there ourselves. We don't know anything either. That type of, for us, for you, type of side where we really made sure that it's a discovery, inspirational experience with lots of trust. And I think that's actually, and building this brand in a space where there were pretty much no product brands itself, right? So there was just also another aspect to this, why Amorelie became so successful. When you think about fashion, then Zalando is just, it's a place for your, whatever you fancy, for your Diesel, for your Boss, for your, you name it. But for Amorelie, nobody actually, if I had asked you, hey, what are your favorite love toy brands? Like, I don't know. So that's why there was such room to also create those brands. We had 11 brands that we created with very different products and with those 90% plus gross margin. So but that's pretty much, I mean, we can dive very deep on lots of cool, funny Amorelie stories. But
let's do that a little bit, because I think there's some interesting pieces there, right? And I think thinking of the audience of being aspiring entrepreneurs, how I think I've said this once before on the podcast, but one of my favorite quotes is by Mike Tyson, where he says, everyone has a plan until he gets punched in the mouth, right? Yeah. And I think you kind of went through this experience where you had these hypotheses, and one by one, certain things broke down and you had to adapt. And I think some of them are worth exploring maybe a little bit. But the first one I want to talk about a little bit, because of something you said, which is, here we are, Mannheim WHU grads did our internships at BCG. Like, there is a perception of a trajectory that you're on. And then you're like, hey, world, we're going to get into the sex toy biz.
And we always call it love toys, by the way. Yeah.
Pardon me. I will get that appropriately. And I think that's something worth unpacking too. But this is a business that I think has a lot of stigmas attached to it. And for people that aren't in Germany, I think it's maybe more mainstreamed here, and that you can find sex shops around, maybe not always in the nicest neighborhood, but there's pretty much one in every town at least, and in other parts of the world it's even more underground and even less mainstream. Talk to me a little bit about this decision to go down this path and how you had to deal with stigmas and societal kind of perceptions of something.
Actually not so much. Because of how we set it up, that we wanted it to be more like a Zappos for love toys, or like a Zalando for love toys for the European audience. And I think this is the perfect sign that you're onto something when a business is either, this wasn't the case for us, but when it's very boring and people say, oh my god, I mean, this is so boring, then I would never spend time exploring ideas in this space. Okay, actually cool. then maybe not a lot of people have done it. So it might make sense to explore as somebody who wants to start a company, or exactly like this, where you have to break taboos, where you have to completely rethink a space to then come up with something that people will buy and that they will be passionate about. And when you look at Amorelie these days, we had this. So in Germany, the Christmas calendar, it's a big thing. Advent, it's for the pre-Christmas time. And at some point, I think we were the biggest Christmas calendar producer in Europe. So we sold like 25 million worth of Christmas calendar.
And these were Advent calendars with love toys.
Yeah, every door has it. Yeah, and so many friends of all of my friends, but I mean, I don't know how many people ended up having one of Amorelie's Christmas calendars, probably 1 million or so. Overall, more than 1 million. So that's huge. And these were people put them in their living room, and for everyone to see. So I think that was the when we got started, being a pirate, being an adventurer. I loved it. I loved that spirit. I loved being very unconventional in what I was doing. Then at some point, Amorelie turned into this amazing lifestyle brand, and people were so proud of posting about it, and I think that's where we had accomplished that mission. And when you talk about Germany these days being very liberal when it comes to that, I think this is not 100% due to Amorelie, but I think Amorelie also played an important role in this, in the society getting more liberal in this aspect. So I'm actually super proud and happy about what we did, and I think it's just it's a great opportunity whenever you feel this, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be thinking about this. And well, probably that's the right time to do it. Yeah. So that was Amorelie, and then 2018, after selling the company, I took some time off. 9 months. I told myself at least I need to take off 6 months, because I know myself that I probably jump into the next opportunity right away. So I didn't. I forced myself not to, and I just traveled a bit, climbed Kilimanjaro, worked at the kitchen of a restaurant for a month, caused lots of trouble there, because I was trying to learn how to cook. I'm still terrible at it, and also take a peek behind the closed doors of the gastronomy industry. I meditated for 10 days in absolute silence, and I wasn't able to look at people and to gesture, to mimic, to do sports, to read, to write, no nothing. Definitely one of the toughest times in my life, those 10 days.
Did you feel like you needed to cleanse yourself?
Yeah, a bit. At least to get to a reset and to really take my mind off things, for sure, 100%. And then I guess after I already noticed after those 6 months, but I dragged it out a bit more, I noticed that I was getting that itch, and I wanted to start something again. And then one of my good friends, Rob, who have known for a long time, and we have also co-invested together, because I already during the Amorelie times, I had started doing angel investments and did my 25-30 angel investments. I had started investing in funds. I also sat on the board of Cherry for a long time until I started Visionaries with Rob. Where we said, okay, that now probably doesn't make sense to sit on the advisory board of a different venture capital fund when I'm running my own. But we're doing lots of deals together with Cherry, so we're still like this. But we didn't want to risk any conflict of interest. But Rob and I. So Rob, he's also a founder, had sold his company to Zalando, then started his own fund, where I was one of the first investors into the fund, then did lots of deals together, me as an angel during the Amorelie times, and him as a GP, so general partner, founding partner at the other fund. And then we actually, small by coincidence, that we met at the end of 2018, because we spent a weekend together with a couple of friends, and then we started talking about what's next. And he was also done investing out of this first fund, and then we said, hey, how about we put our heads together and we try to think about the setup that a VC fund should have, so that it's would have been most amazing for us as founders, and would be the fund that we would have always loved to have as founders. And yeah, the outcome of that is Visionaries Club. So we purposely structured the fund in a way that it brings together the most amazing entrepreneurs on the planet as our investors, and they're all super engaged with our portfolio. So typically, I don't know, how technically detailed listeners know about how a fund works, but you have LPs, so-called LPs, limited partners. They are investors into funds, but they're typically shielded and kind of hidden away from the portfolio founders. And I guess typically for good reason, because typically who's investing in venture funds are large pension funds, for example, and large institutional investors. So both sides, for portfolio founders and fund investors, probably there's not much you can talk about. But in our case, we said, let's not have those investors, but let's only have amazing, cool, super value add and very, very successful digital founders on the one hand and family business owners on the other hand. So by now we have like 30, 40 plus unicorn founders who invested in Visionaries Club and who are sparings partners to our portfolio, like Daniel Dines, who started UiPath and IPO'd it, the Molly founder, Adrian, the Flixbus guys, Get Your Guide. We have Miro founder, Andre, and many others. So it's a long list. And obviously they are the best possible sparings partners to have for our portfolio founders when it comes to how do you actually scale your company. And then on the other hand, there are these amazing family business owners. So like Markus Swarovski who owns Swarovski, Fisman, Oetker, Bitburger, Felix Fiege, who runs Fiege, so one of the largest freight forwarders in Europe, many others. So lots of names you would also know, but I some of them I can't talk about. And what they have is this incredible, not just this incredible network, which is pretty much covering the entire European business landscape, but they themselves are running these companies where they are the core decision makers in businesses that typically have a very long horizon and long vision, that are super entrepreneurial, that they are making those cool decisions when it comes to implementing the solutions that our portfolio founders and portfolio is providing. So that's the essence of Visionaries Club, where we have started microfunds, first to invest in B2B SaaS topics, where we did some amazing investments, both in the pre-seed seed space, which is one microfund, and then the other one is a bit later stage. So Personio and Shoko and GTM Hub, Leapsum, many
B2B SaaS.
All B2B SaaS. And now we are just in the process of have pretty much raised the second generation of funds for those B2B vehicles, which will be a bit bigger, but still, now we have this amazing team here. It's the 15 of us, and next to that, now this is a bit of a brainchild or something. I talked about the white Siberian tiger earlier. I've always loved science, and I've also noticed for myself that I became a dad a year ago, and I really wanted to, within Visionaries Club on this amazing platform, so listening to lots of our LPs and what their desires are, and then taking a look at the world, I had a feeling, together with Rob and the team, that there needs to be a fund, a microfund. So this is going to be like a 50 million plus sized fund called Visionaries Tomorrow, which is investing more in super breakthrough ideas that will have a scientific tech angle, which is gonna help those companies achieve their mission, which is always going to be that they want to make a huge dent in the universe, that they want to attack the world's largest issues.
So would you call this like an impact fund then? Like,
I wouldn't call it that way, because for some reason it's the impact for some reason is oftentimes correlated with lower returns,
Puts you in a
whatever.
box.
So
Yeah.
puts you in a box. So it's specifically it is investing in crazy breakthrough ideas to the world's largest problems. So I always, I love the Steve Jobs thing of making a dent in the universe. So what we want to attract and who we want to invest in and where we want to help with the power of our fund investor base is into those ideas that are will probably be very hard to get to that stage. But then once you get there, that will have massive impact and dent in the universe.
yeah, I mean, I think that's admirable, but I'm really interested in how that maybe marries with a more traditional VC fund, right?
Yeah.
I mean, generally when you're talking these maybe big bets or moonshot kind of things,
Right.
especially scientific,
Yeah.
they tend to have more R&D. They move a little bit slower.
Yeah.
They take more time.
Yeah.
So that tends to require more patient investments and things of
That's
that
true.
sort.
Yeah.
Is this a separate entity or? Do you
It's a separate entity, so it's within the Visionaries Club. For us is a platform. So that's our amazing LPs plus the team plus all the things that we've built so far. Then there will still be the B2B funds, but these are separate entities. And then there's the Tomorrow Fund, and the Tomorrow Fund has a longer time horizon, and it's very clear from the onset that LPs who commit to the fund, so fund investors who commit to the fund, they need to bring a bit more time. They also need to be more patient. They also need to accept that there is a higher risk, that there will be a higher default rate. But if you want to invest in the Tesla of the future, in the BioNTech of the future, then you need to be among those few who dare, and you can't be one of those bystanders who then a couple of years later say, "Oh shit, yeah, actually great, now it makes a ton of sense." But yeah, so you need to build a portfolio that can't be so it will be like a 30 company per fund portfolio. So you can't just do a very concentrated portfolio of like 5-10 investments, but you need to have that a bit larger portfolio. We'll be investing pre-seed seed. So I think that's also part of that game, that coming in early and then really helping those founders in growing by, first of all, building their company, and then growing, scaling, getting to product market fit with those ideas where those family business owners can obviously help a lot, and then scaling globally where our digital founders can help. So that's like the besides obviously running the B2B funds and being involved there, that this is the new little entrepreneurial seed that we're now planting here on the Visionaries soil, and which we're all super excited about.
Well, I think that maybe is just one good question I have, how this all kind of comes together, because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs and even some older ones kind of see entrepreneurs on one side of the table and investors on the other.
Right.
And these are two different worlds, and you need each other, and it's like this symbiotic relationship, but they're distinctly different. I always tell the founders that I work with, like, your investor is bringing on another co-founder. It's bringing on another business partner. It's someone you're going to be in bed with for a long time. From your perspective, having been now on both sides of the table, metaphorically speaking, do you see that being a VC is like being a founder? Do you because it sounds like you're tackling it in a very similar way. Like we're seeing problems, we're seeing market opportunities. How do we maximize that?
So I think this is very much this is Rob and me as founders we are founders, and that's never gonna change. So I think that mindset we would never want to change. And then starting and building a VC is also like starting and building a company. You have to find a name, which is always a nightmare, as everyone knows. Who has started a company before? You need that domain that's still available. You need to hire a team. You need to set up contracts. You need to have funding. You need to establish your processes, etc., etc. So in that respect, it is like starting a company. And I think, for us, having been founders, still being founders, it's so helpful and helps me every day in knowing what it feels like when you have to fire someone, when you're almost running out of cash, when the initiative that you've been working on for a long time isn't working out. So, been there, done that. That's the crazy roller coaster ride that I was referring to earlier. So, yeah.
And you have to acquire customers, right? And that's why I think this new fund is going to be an interesting entrepreneurial journey for you, because you're now acquiring a totally different type of customer than you have been so far. And you're going to be turning over new stones, I imagine, to find them. We're a little short on time. I know you've got a busy day ahead, but I do like to wrap up episodes with kind of a bucket full of similar questions. So the first one is, reflecting back on the past decade and a half of your entrepreneurial journey. I'm sure you've learned a lot from your successes and your failures. Maybe you can share something that you have learned over this time that you wish you could tell your younger self. Like, can you impart some wisdom on a young entrepreneur? And as a dad, you will see over time, like, don't make the same mistake I did. No one will ever listen to you, but
I know, and you always have to. You end up, although you get advice, you still have to. You have to make the mistakes yourself. I mean, this one thing I think this is something that's true, that's very truly there and core to me is this notion of, and I phrased this when I was heavily drunk on my last day at Amorelie on Mallorca, after all of us were boozing the entire day. And then I had this amazing speech, 10-minute speech prepared to say thank you and reflect on the past 7 years. And then since all of us had lots of drinks during the day, I had this speech memorized, but suddenly I didn't have it memorized anymore. So the only thing I could remember was ultimately it's all about the people. And it's really, to me, this is so true. And when I look back, it is so true. It is so true when hiring, when picking out your investors, when picking out a co-founder, but you know what I mean. It's also when it comes to customers, first customers who need to trust you in a B2B setting, for example, a bit harder in B2C. But ultimately it's all about the people. I think this has always been very true in my life, and thinking back to my university days, all the connections I've made, thinking back to those internships, to whatever, ultimately it's all about the people. And what I want to say with that is that whoever you meet, you will probably at some point, you'll cross paths again, and you will be very, very surprised what people do with their lives, and how that might suddenly form this amazing symbiosis. And so that's my one thing. Ultimately, it's all about the people.
That's a good one. I tell a lot of WHU students when I mentor them is like, look at the people that are sitting around you right now in your classes. 15, 20 years from now, those people are going to be, running the world in their own ways, and those relationships that you carry go a long way. Great advice. All right, 2 more questions, very mundane ones, but always interesting. book's on your bedside table? What could you recommend for a read?
Okay, so fiction. I just read A Gentleman in Moscow, and this is not, it's fiction, and it doesn't have anything to do with the ongoing crisis. It does play in Russia, but a long time ago. And Tals, I think is the name of the author. Wow, I mean, what a book! I really loved it. It's such an amazing story. It plays in kind of like the Bolshevik days, and it's an amazing. It's such a feel good story. I'm not going to spoil the story here, but I loved reading it because of how it's written. I would recommend to read it in English. I don't know what the German translation, how that came out. But yeah, really loved it. And then obviously, a ton of business books, but I guess these are all known. Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate it.
And it makes sense to also be able to relax here and there, especially as a founder. I think this is such an underrated skill to be able to shut down and to recharge your battery. So, you don't always have to read those business books, but you can also just open up Gentleman in Moscow and just immerse yourself in this amazing world and just relax a bit.
So you don't need a week of silent meditation. You can just read some fiction and get lost every day.
Yeah.
Nice.
But you may need 10 days of silent meditation. Yeah, don't do that.
All right, last one. You've been in Berlin a long time. I'm sure you have some interesting things cycling on your playlist. What are you jamming out to these days?
I mean, besides the typical Berlin Paul Kalkbrenner and Fritz Kalkbrenner stuff, lots of kids songs. I think I've become very, very fluent in I remember all these kids songs by heart by now, and they do dominate my Spotify, at least during certain times when Henry, our little Sophie's and my 1-year-old son, when he's in the mood for it, then it's non-stop. And it's the same song over and over again. So obviously, there are some favorites.
It's funny. Like, I remember when I first joined Spotify and you could see what your friends were listening to. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. There's some interesting stuff. Now it's just like, I mean, everything on that right column is kids' music now. So
yeah. But yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Paulie, it was a pleasure. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this. I could have done this for another 2 hours. I had a million other questions, but we'll save it to the next one.
Exactly.
When you can share the incredible journey of this next future fund.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Same here.
Well, folks, that was Sebastian Pollok of Visionaries Fund. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming at you all summer long. And as usual, if you enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast streaming service. Bis nächstes Mal.